Good morning to you all. Thank you so much for joining this particular webinar. The Chamber of Commerce itself is based over two counties, Herefordshire and Worcestershire, and beyond, different counties. And today we've got people from delegates from all across the Midlands, so you're all extremely welcome. And I think the topic of the discussion would illustrate how, as two counties, Herefordshire and Worcester, we very much see ourselves as part of that Midlands network. On the call today, we have non-members and we have members of the Chamber. So everybody is extremely welcome. And if you are a non-member, please have a good look at our website. The Chamber of Commerce have over 1,300 members, and we run over 150 events, some like this, and some like another one later this afternoon where there's 100 people getting together at lunchtime. And we also run over 200 training courses. And that's just the start of things. So there's lots going on. So please do have a look at that Chamber of Commerce website. And Chamber members, a lot of you know the ropes, but obviously there's many things there that you might be able to discover. So you're all extremely welcome this morning. And I think it's worth really explaining why we're here and why Herefordshire and Worcester Chamber of Commerce were so keen to work with Midlands Connect on the particular webinar this morning. And I won't steal too much of Andy's thunder, but basically Midlands Connect, they research, develop, and they progress different transport projects. And all of those projects provide value either in economic terms or in social benefit terms to the inhabitants of the Midlands. And as I said earlier, we very much see ourselves as part of that network. And that's exactly why we are really keen to get involved today. And it's also important to realize that behind the scenes, we as an organization, and this is where my policy role comes in, we deal with a number of different partner organizations, none more so than the county councils in both counties. And after this event, we will be sending you an email, which will have a few documents on it. And one of those documents is the Worcestershire County Council Passenger Transport Strategy. Another one is the Herefordshire Local Transport Plan. And the final one will be the British Chamber of Commerce blueprint for building Britain. And within those particular documents, you will understand that there's going to be many references, particularly to rail. And in Worcestershire, they very much see that passenger transport and rail transport form a bit of a backbone, if you like, to a transport network that will then help build and help an economy grow and also allow the residents of that county to benefit as well. And I think also if you look at Herefordshire, a lot of research has been done in Herefordshire with regards to how people want to see local transport develop. And the key criteria given by the people of Herefordshire was to see a transport network, allow the economy to thrive and for businesses to prosper, but equally to improve accessibility and inclusivity for all the communities. So that's where perhaps there's that balance between passenger transport via rail and also by freight transport. And then as far as the British Chamber of Commerce is concerned, they very much took the opinion that as a network, and if you look at the adverts now, you'll notice that the railway network in the UK is 200 years old this year. As a network, much of that network has been developed in those 200 years. And the British Chamber of Commerce very much see projects like HS2, projects of electrification, and projects where perhaps rural communities are more accessible, are very much part of the way forward. And again, that is why, as a Chamber of Commerce, we were really keen to get involved this morning. So that set the scene as far as we're concerned and why we're involved and why we've put together this event with our colleagues at Midlands Connect. But what we'll do now is I'm going to hand you over to Andy Clark from Midlands Connect. He's going to take us through, with colleagues, a series of slides, which I think will set the picture, probably get your thought processes moving, and then we can have a good old Q&A at the end. So remember, if you want to pop it in the chat, please do. If not, let's wait till the end, and then I'll be running the Q&A, looking for your hands going up on the screen. So, Andy, I'm going to hand over to you, sir. And you take us through it, and then we'll have a chat later. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. That's great. Hi, everyone. I'm Andy Clark. I work for Midlands Connect. I'm the interim head of rail. I'm joined today by a few colleagues on the call, both from Midlands Connect, but also from some of our partner organisations. So before I launch into some slides, if I can just invite Toby Ratcliffe to introduce himself, please.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and apologies for being late. I was really struggling with the Zoom link. Yeah, I'm Toby Ratcliffe. I'm Strategic Lead of our policy at West Midlands Rail Executive. So just for your information, we are a partnership of local authorities. Herefordshire is one of our board members, and we jointly manage and specify the West Midlands Trains contract with the department, so the Hereford to Birmingham services via Ledbury, and we are client partners on the Midlands Rail Hub project alongside Midlands Connect.
Thank you, Toby. So on to the set of slides that we've put together this morning. As Robert mentioned, it probably works best, please, if we run through the slides, and then we've left plenty of time at the end for questions, answers, and hopefully some really good discussion. So if I can ask Toby to do a bit of scene setting, please, and then it'll be back to me for some of the specifics on the scheme. So over to you, Toby, to kick us off, please.
Yeah, okay, no, thanks, everyone. I mean, as you may well be aware, I mean, Birmingham New Street in particular has always been at the heart of not just the regional network, but also the national network. And as such, it's the busiest station outside of London, the busiest interchange outside of London. An awful lot of people change trains there and access all parts of the country, including, all three of the great British nations as well. What we've had with New Street, though, and we've known this has been coming for some time, the approaches are very constrained. You've got tunnels leading into it from the southwest, from the northwest, from all points of the compass, and actually funneling down from multiple routes onto just 4 tracks at either end of the station, which really constricts the number of trains you can bring into New Street. There's actually enough platforms, there's a bit of space there, you just can't actually get to them. So New Street was rebuilt back in 2015, massively expanding the passenger circulation space so it can take about 6 times as many people at sort of the concourse level, and you've got the big new area atrium with the bull in it. But we're already now in a situation where we can only introduce new services into Birmingham if we start considering trade-offs by taking other services out. It's got to that point on the network now where we're really struggling to expand and meet, the way that the rail network can actually support future growth across the region as well, given the importance of New Street as a hub. So, I mean, we have got HS2 coming, albeit only down towards London and the interchange with the Elizabeth line now, so we'll still get that released capacity there to an extent, but where we really need it is also on the corridors out towards Worcestershire, Herefordshire, the southwest, South Wales, and out towards the East Midlands as well. So this is really sort of some of the driving factors behind why we need Midlands Rail Hub going forwards, and it is all about being able to continue to let the network support us as we grow the region. You're on mute, Andy.
Oh dear, sorry. I just wanted to build on what Toby said and explore some of the broader rationale for the intervention. So Toby's made it very clear that there's a strong transport challenge to address in the Midlands. So for us, this is about providing much more capacity in the transport system, but in a reliable and resilient way. Of course, transport for us is very much the means rather than the end. So for us, this is about supporting key government missions, particularly those around unlocking economic growth, but also providing access to opportunity and, of course, unlocking housing across the Midlands. Housing's a really interesting topic, and actually a lot of my time in recent months has actually been taken up with talking to our partners in the government about some of the benefits that Midlands Rail Hub brings in a housing sense. So we know that the government has put forward actually some quite chunky targets in terms of new housing across the Midlands. And actually we can see that Midlands Rail Hub has a really key role to play in facilitating that growth. It's also about facilitating faster and more comfortable journeys. So perhaps not not quite so relevant for a kind of a Worcestershire perspective, but certainly if you've taken a train between the West and the East Midlands, you'll be aware that actually some of those trains are really quite overcrowded. And some of the reason for the overcrowding is that they're trying to serve local stations, but also some of the key city-to-city flows. So in kind of transport terms, the markets aren't particularly segregated. The trains are trying to move lots of different people for kind of lots of different purposes. So we want to make faster and more comfortable journeys. And the way we can do that is to sort of differentiate the service groups more effectively. So have kind of specific services that call at the local stations, and then specific services which call at the bigger stations or the bigger cities. Freight growth is also absolutely key for us. You may be aware of the government target in regard to rail freight. So this is to increase rail freight by 75% by 2050. So really quite an ambitious level of growth in that target. Some of that is about lengthening or kind of running more on existing freight trains, but actually a lot of that will be about running additional freight trains to cater for that sort of level of growth. So for us, there's a really kind of compelling rationale and reason that we need to be pushing on with Midlands Rail Hub. So a short history of the scheme. I don't intend to bore you with lots of kind of historical specifics, but in terms of the scheme itself, this is not a particularly new concept. So people were talking about the concept of Midlands Rail Hub as long ago as the 1990s. However, probably the real kind of launchpad year for us was around 2015, 2016. And around that time, there were two key industry documents that were published. The first of those was Network Rail's West Midlands and Chilterns route study, apologies. That made a really strong case for additional capacity in the centre of Birmingham to unlock additional train services across a large swathe of the Midlands. Similarly, my organisation came into being just over a decade ago, and we published our first strategy in 2017. But as part of that strategy, we made Midlands Rail Hub very much our flagship scheme. So we said, actually, this is really the major rail priority for our region. So in 2017, we arrived at a position where there was really strong industry consensus that actually Midlands Rail Hub was very much our preferred rail scheme for the Midlands. And since that time, we've been working through the business case process. I'm sure you'll be well aware of what a business case is trying to do, but fundamentally it's a presentation to set out the costs, but also the benefits of the scheme. So that started back in 2018, 2019 with what we call a strategic outline business case. That's the, if you like, the kind of entry-level business case. That's the first business case in the process. That was really well received by government, thankfully, and they then provided some further money for what we call the outline business case. So at this stage, you've lost the S, so you're not a strategic, you're an outline business case. And as you go through the business cases, the level of understanding and detail increases quite considerably. So that outline business case was completed in 2022. Again, very well received by government. They could understand the kind of value for money case that we were putting forward for the scheme. And what that meant is that the last government in February 2024 released some money to enable the full business case to proceed. And the full business case is the most detailed of the lot. This is when you're really getting into some very detailed design work. So you're effectively putting forward a really detailed pitch to the government in terms of what you want, but also what you expect back in terms of benefits. Lots of documents since 2017 have continued to endorse Midlands Rail Hub. So we, as Midlands Connect, we produced our updated strategy in 2022. And again, that continued to bang the drum for Midlands Rail Hub as being the centrepiece scheme. Similarly, Network Rail published its West Midlands Strategic Advice, and again, that made a really strong pitch for Midlands Rail Hub. And Toby's organisation, West Midlands Rail Exec, also produced a very detailed document back in 2022. And consistent with those other documents, it really made a strong pitch for Midlands Rail Hub. So that's probably enough of a history. I'm sure you'll want to hear some specifics of the scheme itself. So just launching now into a bit of the detail. So the concept is really what's on the screen here in this schematic. So this is not a Birmingham geography lesson by any means, but actually a place called Bordesley, just east of Birmingham city centre, is a really crucial location for Midlands Rail Hub. The reason it's crucial is that this is currently the crossroads between two different bits of railway lines. So the Chiltern main line is the one going from the top left down towards the bottom right, so from Birmingham down towards Marylebone. And the line going from the sort of southwest up towards the northeast is what we call the Camp Hill line. The centrepiece, if you like, of Midlands Rail Hub in engineering terms is providing new links to get you from one of those lines onto the other. So in particular, the west chord is the sort of bottom of those green arrows. This is a short stretch of new railway that would enable you to get from places like Worcester and Hereford, but also Bristol and Cardiff, into Birmingham Moor Street. So not currently possible. Same concept really from the East Midlands side. So if you're currently coming from somewhere like Nottingham or Derby into Birmingham, your train has to go to Birmingham New Street. It can't go to Moor Street. So we provide a short stretch of new railway line that enables those trains to also run into Birmingham Moor Street. So the Bordesley chords, you'll hear us talk about those a lot in any Midlands Rail Hub presentation, but for very good reason, because it's really the centrepiece in kind of engineering terms. It unlocks a substantial amount of new rail capacity, so up to 300 additional trains per day into or out of Birmingham. As Toby said, we're already very much in trade-off territory in central Birmingham, in that there's lots of extra services that people want to run, but they simply don't fit on the network. So as you can see here, we're talking about unlocking capacity for a large number of new trains across the day. In terms of the scheme itself, to date we've used what's called Railway Network Enhancements Programme Money, RNEP. So the Department for Transport is the client for the scheme. Fair enough. I mean, it's government money, so obviously they want to have a decent hand in the scheme. Network Rail is the delivery agent, so they are the ones who are holding the pen on the business case. And as Toby said at the very start, our organisation, Midlands Connect, and Toby's organisation, West Midlands Rail Exec, are the client partners. So we're ensuring that there's a kind of very much a Midlands focus on this scheme. So I talked quite a bit there about Birmingham City Centre. Of course, it's not just about Birmingham City Centre. We do require supporting infrastructure further afield. But just before we do leave Birmingham, just to mention that as well as those chords, we do also need new platform capacity in the centre of Birmingham. So if you've been to Snow Hill in recent years, you'll be aware that there is a fourth platform at Snow Hill, but it's currently disused. It was used by the Midland Metro tramway until about 2015, 2016. At that point, the tramway was extended to run up into the centre of Birmingham, and the platform has been unused since that time. So one of the kind of key upfront deliverables of Midlands Rail Hub is reinstating that platform for heavy rail services. Just along the line at Birmingham Moor Street, and perhaps I'm biased, but I think Moor Street's by far and away the nicest of the Birmingham stations, well worth a visit. We provide some additional new platforms. So we provide a fifth platform on the side that's next to Selfridges, and on the other side, so on the Curzon Street side, we provide two new platforms that we've, for now, called A and B. They obviously might be called something different when they are introduced. Between those stations and the Bordesley chords, we do need to widen what's called the Bordesley Viaduct. That is to ensure that we can have enough tracks approaching the station to accommodate this quantum of additional trains that we're looking at. However, heading down towards Worcestershire and Herefordshire, we do some additional infrastructure. So we rebuild Kings Norton Station. Again, if you've been in recent years, you'll be aware that the trains currently serve the kind of outside platforms. The big platform in the middle has long since been disused. So Midlands Rail Hub brings that middle island platform back into use, And of course, in doing so, you have to adhere to modern standards. So it'll be a new footbridge, new accessibility, all those sorts of things. So it would be actually really quite an important interchange station as part of Midlands Rail Hub. Between Kings Norton and Barnet Green, we introduce what basically a 4-track fully electrified railway. So at the moment, it's only part of the railway that's electrified, and some of it's 3-track rather than 4. So actually having a 4-track railway means we've got the capacity we need to run a large number of additional services in a reliable and resilient way. Slightly further afield, on the side towards the East Midlands, we do some remodelling at a place called Wateraughton. One of those places, a lot of people haven't heard of it, but actually anyone working on the railway will definitely have heard of it, because it's quite a constraint at the moment, both for passenger services, but also for freight trains. So that's a key junction that we need to remodel as part of Midlands Rail Hub. We're also actively looking at what else we need to do out towards the East Midlands. Network Rail is busy on the business case, but we do expect some additional line speed works, some additional capacity measures, etc. on those routes out towards the East Midlands. So I wanted to move on to what I hope will be of quite a bit of interest to this audience. So these are some of the specific benefits that we expect for Worcestershire and Herefordshire. If I can start first with what we call the Cross-City line. This is the electric railway that links Bromsgrove and Redditch on the south side, with centre of Birmingham, Four Oaks and Lichfield on the north side. It's a high-frequency railway, very well used. It historically has been a 6 trains per hour railway, certainly since the early 2000s. However, when COVID came along, that was dropped down to a 4 train per hour service. It's a key priority for various partners in the West Midlands to reinstate that to a 6 trains per hour service. So actually one of the kind of upfront deliverables of Midlands Rail Hub is helping us reinstate that 6 trains per hour service. The problem we've got at the moment is, whilst it is 4 trains in the hour, they're not evenly spaced. So there are some 20-minute gaps in the hour. So actually reinstating a 6 train per hour service means a train every 10 minutes. It means people don't need to look at the timetable. So actually it really helps attract mode shift away from people driving or using other less sustainable modes of transport. Worcestershire Parkway is of key interest to us. So this station opened just before COVID, actually. I think it was February 2020. So as of the timetable change that just happened in May, this is served by 2 trains an hour towards Birmingham, but also westerly services on the North Cotswold line. Midlands Rail Hub would add additional trains out towards Cheltenham, Gloucester and Cardiff, and we expect some of those to be calling at Worcestershire Parkway. So at least another hourly call at Worcestershire Parkway, potentially more. So quite a decent uplift for Worcestershire Parkway. Moving to centre of Worcester and focusing on Worcester Foregate Street, you might be aware that through the day it's an hourly service to Birmingham New Street via Bromsgrove, with some peak extras, so there are some extra trains at particularly busy times. With Midlands Rail Hub in place, we have the capacity available for that to be a 2 train per hour service all day. Obviously, as a passenger, a half-hourly service is very much more attractive than an hourly service, and actually that's really borne out in the economics of the scheme. So increasing the frequencies in the way described, we do get a real big uplift in terms of patronage, and of course extra patronage means kind of benefits that we can accrue directly to the scheme. Moving on to Hereford, I mean, in service terms, relatively similar story to Worcester, in that the basic service from Hereford is an hourly train to Birmingham through the day via Worcester and Bromsgrove. With Midlands Rail Hub in place, the capacity is there for that to be a half-hourly service right through the day. The difficulty we've got with Hereford, and we don't want to, we want to be transparent about this, is that we do need some works in the Worcester area to allow that second train to run west of Worcester. So the kind of transport issue in the Worcester area is that both the layout and the signalling in Worcester area are frankly historic. So they've got what we call semaphore signals. So it's same sort of signalling you'd see on the Severn Valley Railway. So it's widely used on heritage railways, but actually it's really quite rare nowadays on the national network. I mean, it works perfectly fine, but it's very dated, and operationally it's quite clunky. So Network Rail is working up the detail of a modernisation scheme in the Worcester area. So as well as re-signalling, it also improves the layout. It's one of those situations where if you've already got the digger and you're digging up to re-signal it, actually you might as well try and improve the layout at the same time, so that what you're putting back in gives you maximum capacity and provision for the future. So there's some work in progress in the Worcester area, and as I said, we do need some extra capacity in the Worcester area to enable that Worcester service to run on beyond to Hereford. Just talking a little bit about some of the benefits beyond Worcestershire and Herefordshire. I did allude to this a little bit earlier, but as well as services out towards the south, Midlands Rail Hub does provide an additional tranche of services out from the West Midlands towards the East Midlands, so including the cities of Leicester, Derby and Nottingham. Just to note that the specifics of that service provision are work in progress, but broadly speaking, we're looking at up to a doubling of frequency towards those big cities. So again, Midlands Rail Hub does provide a significant uplift in network capacity. On the south side, as well as the trains I've already described towards Worcestershire and Herefordshire, we are looking at additional trains down towards Gloucestershire and also onwards towards South Wales. We are currently, as you do in a business case, you do have to continually refine the spec. So we are working through some details with Network Rail, but fundamentally it's kind of two sets of services, those out towards the East Midlands, those towards Worcester, Herefordshire, the South West and South Wales. So I'll hand back to Toby to talk a little bit about some recent artist impressions that we had produced for the scheme.
Yeah, no, thanks, Andy. So yeah, just to give you an overview, what you can see on the left-hand side will be the new HS2 Birmingham Curzon Street station, and just to the right centre is Moore Street station, and then to the far right you've got the building and the tunnel under towards New Street station. So what we're looking to do with Midlands Rail Hub with the full scheme is expand Moore Street on both sides, so reinstate. There's actually a derelict platform already in situ on the building side that isn't currently utilised, and bringing that back into service, and also providing new platforms primarily for the East Midlands services on the other side of Moore Street Station, closest to HS2. And I think what you can get from this is actually just how close those stations will be together. So from our perspective, the rail exec and also working for Transport for West Midlands, this is going to be a major transport interchange hub, both with the two stations, with New Street just under the tunnel, and with the wider public transport network coming into central Birmingham as well. The tram will be running under the HS2 station and then going out towards Digbeth, the new sports quarter now as recently announced, and also connecting with other parts of the Black Country. So it's going to be a completely different place. If you've ever been to King's Cross and St Pancras, I think what we're creating is sort of a King's Cross, St Pancras in miniature, with the Midlands Rail Hub and the HS2 stations combined. I'll move on to the next one, Andy. So this doesn't actually show you a huge amount. What you've got running from the top left is where Moore Street Station is, that you just saw on the previous visual. Running down towards the centre right is the existing Chiltern Main Line and Snow Hill Line down out towards Solihull, Stratford upon Avon, Warwick, and ultimately on towards London Marylebone. And the line running sort of broadly from the bottom left-hand corner to the top right is the Camp Hill line, which is essentially, it's a Birmingham New Street bypass at the moment. It's mostly used by freight services avoiding New Street Station, coming up from Herefordshire, Worcestershire, the South West and South Wales, and going out towards the East Midlands. And the two curves in white are the two new chords, which will be new sections of connecting railway on elevated sections of viaduct that will create that Camp Hill line connection into Moore Street and also Birmingham Snow Hill as well. And next one, Andy. And again, this is just an overview of the rebuilt Kings Norton station, which will be fully accessible, putting back the centre platforms there for the additional MLH services, and also potentially creating actually an important interchange between the lines into New Street that exist at the moment and the new lines into Birmingham Moore Street and that Moore Street HS2 hub that we spoke about previously. So I think I'll leave it there and just hand back to Andy to wrap us up.
Thank you, Toby. Just to run through some next steps, but I guess to begin with a caveat that this is subject to us understanding some of the specifics in terms of last week's spending review. But for those of you who followed the coverage, you will have seen that we were name dropped as a scheme by the Chancellor, which was a really positive thing for us. So as you might imagine, we're doing lots of publicity as a result of that announcement. So on to some specifics of what's next. As I described earlier, the full business case is the most meaty, if you like, of the business cases. So we expect to continue work on that. So lots of work on both the engineering side, but also on the costing and the benefits side. It goes without saying that we want to put forward the strongest possible case. So really looking to sharpen the pen as much as we possibly can in terms of a value for money proposition to the government. We are continuing to work with colleagues at Network Rail on the Worcester area works I described earlier. So both the re-signalling, but also the broader modernisation piece. And the reason that's very important to us is because we do need that additional capacity in the Worcester area to enable that train to run on through to Hereford. We've talked a little bit about some of the new infrastructure just east of Birmingham city centre, including the chords that Toby described a moment ago. In order to build those chords, we do require some land take, and the mechanism for us to get that land take is the Transport Works Act Order, TWAO, bit of a mouthful. So that's the process by which we'll be acquiring that land. So what we'll be busy doing in the next year or so is some consultation and some quite specific submission of information so that we can acquire the land in the right way. It goes without saying that over the next few years, we will continue to liaise as much as we possibly can with MPs of all colours. I was certainly really pleased with the level of MP support and also mayoral support that we received in recent months. I think probably suffice to say that political support has been key in keeping the thing moving and obviously getting us into a position where we were name dropped in last week's spending review. Just before we close, and this is the last slide and then we'll open it up for some discussion, I just wanted to run through some of the challenges. And I guess this is a sort of if you like, a sort of personal perspective from our sort of respective organisations in the Midlands. I think the first of the challenges undoubtedly is affordability. So we've got a great scheme here. We've got a really strong value for money case. Unfortunately for us, there are lots of really good schemes out there, also with a really good value for money case. So it's a competitive place to be, particularly in a time when funding is constrained. So definitely a challenge around affordability and particularly making sure that we can deliver a decent bang for our buck. So as I said earlier, 300 additional trains into and out of Birmingham. We can demonstrate a big uplift. And actually, in rail terms, the scheme cost is relatively modest. I'm not going to say it's cheap because that's probably the wrong word, but certainly relative to some of the bigger schemes, we do deliver an awful lot for a relatively modest amount. Keeping the strategic rationale relevant and tangible, we've had some very real world experience at doing this over the last year or so. And I guess from my perspective, having worked on this for quite a few years, I don't think the rationale for the scheme has particularly changed. But what we have had to do, certainly in the last 6 months, if not a bit longer, is make sure that we very clearly align with the government's new missions. So, for example, the missions around economic growth, around supporting housing and supporting access to opportunity. So if you look at any of our comms material, you'll see that we very deliberately refer to the government missions and certainly the housing, economic growth, access to opportunity, all those sorts of things. One of the key challenges is about getting the land that we need for the scheme. And the photo on the screen there is a development at a place called 193 Camp Hill. And this is, that's not a photo, that's an impression of what it will look like. But actually, if you've been past, you'll see that actually this development is rapidly taking shape. The development is very close to the new chords at Bordersley. And for me, this is a really good kind of live example of the trade-off between kind of new development and new transport. Of course, the City Council understandably want both. So they want all this new good redevelopment, but they also want good transport links. And so a key part of our job over the coming years is to ensure that we've got the right land and all the developers and people moving into these new developments are very aware of what will be coming in the future. Maintaining strong political support, touched on this a moment ago. Obviously, we've had, particularly local elections, some different council leaders coming in. We need to ensure that people across the political spectrum are supportive of the scheme. So we're going to be working very hard, as we have done, to be honest, over the last year or so, to keep that political momentum going forward. Delivering as quickly as possible is probably not a challenge that's unique to Midlands Rail Hub. See, every scheme wants to get in as quickly as possible. But I think for us, what this really means on the ground is getting some early deliverables built so that actually the government can start recouping some benefits from its investment. That obviously really helps in terms of a pitch to the government. And then last but not least, recognise that HS2 is already bringing some quite considerable benefits to the Midlands. We want to provide as much transport capacity as possible to get people into HS2 on day one of its opening. Of course, it's not just getting people into HS2, it's also getting people the other way. So people are arriving on an HS2 service at Curzon Street. We want them to have transport options to be able to complete their journey, whether that's within the Midlands or beyond the Midlands. And of course, that might be on one of our new services, either from New Street or from the adjacent Moore Street station. So with that said, I'll stop there and we'll hand back to Robert for some questions and answers, please.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you for taking us through that. Thank you, Toby, also. As somebody who knows that neck of the woods in Birmingham quite well, there's a considerable opportunity to develop not only the railway, but also the area. So that would be fantastic. And then equally, I think what we've definitely learned this morning is that in terms of freight transport, passenger transport, the opportunity for movement of people and things around the area, there's a lot of opportunity there. I'm also delighted that there are at least 5 questions. So I'm going to go to the chat. John Heselton, I've seen your hand up, so I'll come to you, sir. But I'm going to go with the first one in the chat here, which was great. Can you see those, Andy, by any chance? But yeah, I'll read it to you. Can see it, can you? Okay. So basically, what does CSR reference mean in reality? Is there any extra fresh money provided, or was it just reiteration of government support for the Midlands Rail Hub?
Yeah, I'll take this one. As is often the way with announcement, it's no fresh money at this stage. But because of the comprehensive spending review, it was just that. It was a comprehensive spending review. It was looking at all funding streams within government, even those announced previously by the previous government. So actually retaining Midlands Rail Hub was actually a big win there. And to get it referenced, as Andy said, by the Chancellor was really positive, because there would have been a risk that previously announced funding would not have continued. So I think we're relatively happy with the outcome of the CSR.
Great stuff. And actually linked, I think very well linked to that question Is there local authority, as in Hereford and Worcestershire, is there local authority funding required, or is this going to be all national funding?
It is national funding for Midlands Rail Hub, and I think one of the things that we were really pleased about, Midlands Connect did some brilliant work with the initial strategic outline business case. On the back of that, actually, the DFT has picked up the scheme and run with it because they see it as being of national importance, not just for the local or for the region. And when you think about, linking the Southwest, South Wales, and across towards the East Midlands as well, you can see why they've come to that conclusion.
Okay, which is why it's really good that it was mentioned in dispatches last week, and it would appear to be on the agenda. So that's very encouraging. Mark, I'm coming to your questions in a minute, but John, I'm coming to you for your questions, sir. John Heseltine.
Yeah, morning everybody. Thanks, Andy and Toby. Just to say, everything you've said, I agree with, and I think Worcester Parkway has made a big difference to everything that we're doing. I'm looking at a quick win. You said that capacity's a problem, funding's a problem. One thing that would be really useful is the links to the airport and London. And I'll tell you the issue I've got is if I want to go and get a flight from Birmingham International at 6 o'clock, between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock in the morning, I've got to be there 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Currently, that means a car journey, car park, which is an issue. So earlier trains would be useful, even if it was on a limited basis. And I think that's also stopping people moving to the area, because I spoke to people within Kidderminster and a few other areas within Worcestershire and Herefordshire, and they won't go to the area because they can't get to London early enough in the morning because of the link. So it was a question, is there any chance of things earlier to get people to the key hubs like Worcester Parkway, Worcester Shrub Hill and Birmingham International to get to places like London and abroad?
Well, I'll probably take that one because as at West Midlands Rail Exec, we do jointly manage the service specification for West Midlands trains with the Department for Transport. And I say Herefordshire and Worcestershire are both board members of ours and have an input into that. There are some real challenges with early morning trains, both from a resource perspective in terms also of the lines are very often closed overnight for engineering works. We've been trying for a long time with the airport to actually get earlier trains just between Birmingham, the airport and Coventry. Because you say, I live in Coventry, the airport's only 10 minutes away by train, but you can't get there for 4 o'clock for when you need to be for the 6 a.m. flights. So I think we are continuing to push at that. I think there was a lost opportunity a few years ago when you could have changed the signalling arrangements to allow engineering work and some train movements on the line between Birmingham and the airport. I think that's probably where our focus in the first instance is going to be, because if you can't get that onward connection to the airport when you get to Birmingham, there's probably no point in that earlier service from coming in from the Worcestershire area. So yeah, it's still a very live issue, but not an easy one to resolve. And they closed the line completely 1 week out of 6 between Birmingham and the airport. So you could run it for 5 weeks and then have a hiatus, and that makes things quite challenging from a passenger offer perspective. But yeah, absolutely agree. It's something we ideally want to sort out, and if you look elsewhere, something that they have managed to sort out for other key airports around the country.
Thanks for that.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Joe. Tony and Scott, I can see your hands, so don't worry. I will come to you. So, Tony, you can put your hand down. I promise I'll come to you. I'm going to go to Mark's questions in the chat. There's a couple of questions there, Hereford-based, actually. So the first one, do Worcester Hereford lose all trains into New Street? The colours on the map shown implied that. Appreciated the majority of the journeys will be to Birmingham City Centre, but lots of commuters to the university from the 2 counties would then be put off using rail, and all journeys beyond Birmingham then require a change of station. Again, unattractive. So maybe there's a comment on that. And then leading on, what are your thoughts on journey times from Worcester and Hereford to Birmingham? These are already slow, and now journeys, at least the new ones, will be routed into less convenient stations. Feels like end-to-end journeys will take longer.
I think if I do, I'll say something on journey times, and then I'll perhaps invite Toby on the sort of the Birmingham stations topic. I mean, in terms of service pattern, as you might imagine, there's lots of different tunes you can play. So when we first looked at this notion of a second service to Hereford, the broad principle is it would be a faster service. So rather than just replicating the stopping pattern of the existing service, which calls at all the stations, this was the opportunity to run a slightly faster service. So, for example, it might call at the likes of Great Malvern, but perhaps not some of the smaller stations. So the principle we've run with to date is that service would be a bit quicker, rather than just replicating what's there. If I perhaps hand over to Toby on the sort of Birmingham stations university link, please.
Yeah, no, we're very much aware that is a flow that is relatively well used at the moment, coming in, particularly I think from Worcester, from Droitwich and Bromsgrove, coming into both the university and the Queen Elizabeth Hospital site as well. So, as I said, we are continuing to look at the service spec. There's probably a couple of issues in terms of we don't necessarily want to confuse passengers by having their trains for one particular location going from two different stations in central Birmingham. And we want to try and protect existing markets. But ultimately, there will always be trade-offs. I mean, we probably won't bottom out what the final service specification is in terms of what will actually be delivered when Midlands Rail Hub's complete, probably for several years. And for the business case, we just have to make assumptions in terms of what delivers the better business case at the moment. But I think a key part of this is going to be to allow people to make those easy interchanges between services going into the different Birmingham stations going forward, which is why we flagged sort of the potential opportunities at Kings Norton in particular in future to do that sort of easy switch between the two routes, and as opposed to sort of what the longer journey times. No, absolutely, yeah, not, as Andy said, not longer journey times, and clearly I think which station is better for you in central Birmingham really depends on where you want to be. And I think you've got to remember that the east side of Birmingham and the whole of Digbeth, Smithfield, going out towards Bordesley in 10-15 years time is going to be a very, very different place, and a significant new regional economic hub in its own right, which people will be wanting to get to.
Yeah, fair comment. And also if University Station is anything to go by and the Kings Norton refurb looks anything like University, then that would be a fantastic addition. It's an excellent station. Tony, over to you, sir. Oh, for some reason, you're on mute, but you're not on mute. Let's try it again. Try again, Tony. No. Not sure what's happening with your microphone, Tony. You're not on mute, but I can't hear you. So we're going to try and sort that out. I'm going to go to Scott, and then I'll come back to you. Scott, over to you.
Yeah, hi. Just wanted to say, so Scott Tompkins, Infrastructure Delivery Director from Herefordshire. We are literally about to break ground on our new transport hub at the station. So this puts a bus connection along with great public realm and cycling facilities, etc., enhancing the Hereford station. So I think my question has been answered with the previous comments, because our concern is about making sure that we're putting this £12 million investment into Herefordshire Station, and what we want to see is the potential for more services into Hereford, and certainly more rolling stock on the services that are being between Hereford and Birmingham, which is an active problem right now, which our members are very agitated about. So that was just wanted to very supportive of this, but just wanted to put that in.
Okay,
thank you, Scott. Thank you. Toby, do you want to come back?
That's a great project, actually, the Hereford Station one, and I think the improved connectivity into the city centre is going to make a massive difference. Clearly, Midlands Rail Hub, we are wanting to put in that second service into Hereford, speed up journey times where we can. And I just want to touch on the rolling stock issue at the moment. Yeah, there are some real problems that the train operator are facing at the moment, sourcing parts primarily for the trains that are operating there, plus some problems with the newly manufactured trains that have been built down in Newport, which means they need electrification work. So they are short of trains at the moment, and that's likely to continue, unfortunately, for the number of months. But we have got the Mayor of the West Midlands involved in this as well, and getting the manufacturers and their suppliers around the table. So we are pushing them as hard as we can.
Great stuff. Thank you. Tony, I'm not sure what's happening with your microphone, but if you can type the question into the chat, that'll be superb. While Tony's doing that, I'm just having a quick look to see if there are any other questions. I've got just one out of one question, and that would be, if you had an ideal scenario and everything was aligned in terms of funding, acquiring land, development land, etc., what does good look like? What does good really look like in terms of us being able to see some real sort of benefits to this project ourselves?
I think from a sort of delivery perspective, we are keen to push on as quickly as possible. So the programme as things stand would have all of this delivered by the early 2030s. As I think I mentioned a little bit earlier in the presentation, there are opportunities, though, to do some of this quicker. So, for example, one of the really obvious candidates is reinstating that fourth platform at Snow Hill. And to be honest, it's the sort of intervention where if you could build it tomorrow, we would, because it would be incredibly useful in terms of operating today's railway. So I think for us, it's delivering the end state as we've set out, but also pushing on with some of those kind of quicker measures so that actually we're getting benefits of people that are tangible in the next handful of years.
Yeah,
capacity and flexibility. Yeah,
and speaking from our perspective as well, I think we're very keen, as well as Snow Hill platform, to try and push the work at Kings Norton forward as quickly as possible as well, because even without, I think, the central Birmingham stuff, we may be able to get some improvements in services out towards Worcestershire, at least on the back of that, as part of a staged introduction of the project over time. So yeah, I think we're very live to looking at what the opportunities are for bringing elements of the project forward.
But I think now we've been name dropped in the CSR. I think there's a bit more spring in our step. We've got kind of renewed confidence, so we're going to try and sort of push on as quickly as possible.